I'm assuming a lot of you over here are site owners. A lot of you over here are people who run websites for themselves or their clients or their agencies or for their friends, and you must deal with bot traffic on a daily basis, right? I mean, it's usual for site owners to deal with bot traffics, and it's important for us to learn that how we can manage bot traffic on our website, how we can detect good bots versus bad bots, which is why we have an amazing set of panelists over here today among us who will be taking us through this through this topic, and I'm sure you're going to be getting a lot of information on bot traffic and how to manage those bots. So let me first introduce our guest speakers for today. So we have, first up, we have Akshat Chaudhary. Akshat, thank you so much for being here. I know this is not the first event that we are doing together. We have been, hosting and doing events for the past couple of years, and I thank you so much again for being here and talking about security and just enlightening our audience with your knowledge.
Hi Mohammed. It's always good to be part of the Cloudways Security Bootcamp. It's such a great event, and thank you again for having me. Yeah, I'm glad to be here to talk
Perfect.
about bots, which is such
So
a important topic.
perfect. Thank you, Akshat. So anyone who doesn't know who Akshat is the CEO and founder of BlogVault, which is a leading WordPress backup and security solution. He's also the driving force behind MalCare and WP Remote, platform focused on again website security and management. He has over a decade of experience in WordPress ecosystem. He has been playing a crucial role in making sure that WordPress websites all over the world are safe and secure. With that, I would like to invite my second guest on stage, Greg Fisher from Limit Login Attempts. Greg, so happy to have you over here. So for people who don't know who Greg is the CMO of Limit Login Attempts. A lot of people that we know already use this plugin. We use it over here as well, a leading WordPress security plugin, over 2.5 million active installations. And he has, over 20 plus years of experience in digital marketing, and he co-founded a company, multiple, ventures as well. So, Greg, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited for you to have this, or to have you on this panel.
Yeah, appreciate being here. Thank you.
Finally, we have Gui Habarov. Gui, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Gui is the CDO of Limit Login Attempts. Again, is from the same team, bringing over 20 plus years of experience, software development and management. So I'm super excited to have all three of you over here on this session, and I can't wait to start off with the questions for this panel. Again, I just want to remind everyone on over here who are listening to this broadcast that we do have a prize for the most engaging attendee of this event. So make sure that you keep asking questions, leaving comments in the chat to make sure that you have a chance to win uh, to win prizes. So let's start off, fellas. Let's start off with the first question of the day. So let me just pull up the questions. And my first question is for Greg. Greg, your latest brute force attack report sort of uncovers some alarming trends, right? I mean, can you share the most shocking insights and what they mean for website security in 2025?
Yes, thank you. So we did a brute force attack report for 2024. You can go to our website, go to our blogs, and so you can view the entire report. But a couple of the most interesting things we saw from this is that brute force attacks have increased year over year per average domain. We have approximately 60,000 domains in our premium network that we actually receive IP data from, but it increased by approximately 120% year over year. So brute force attacks are becoming much more prevalent in WordPress sites more than ever. Also, another thing that was interesting is that IP address that originated of these brute force attacks, China and Singapore had the most steady incline of attacks compared to other countries. So surprisingly, we're seeing like emerging markets having more IP. Now, brute force attacks can originate from multiple different countries. Some of them are ran by proxy. But we also saw a decline in IP addresses from the U.S. that were and we have assumptions to why that might be, but we saw that kind of interesting that less brute force attacks originate from U.S. domains. So those are like the two main things from a report that we kind of took away.
Awesome. Next question is from Guri. Guri, as bot attacks, become more advanced, what are the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs still make when trying to detect bots and block them?
The bot attacks become more advanced. So the main idea is to stay ahead of them, right? From that perspective, the biggest mistakes are, well, the first is relying on static methods. For example, maintaining a static list of bad IPs, especially when done manually. Same goes with having a static list of browser signatures and user agents. That's because modern bots are very dynamic, as you know. They can easily change IPs, especially with IPv6 coming into play. And they can easily mimic user browsers and their fingerprints as well. So you have to find a dynamic solution for the site defense to stay ahead. The next common mistake is using a security tool alone, like isolated from other tools. For example, if you use just a captcha or just a list of bad IPs, or just a 2FA or rate limiting alone, those measures are usually insufficient on their own. You should always use a layered security approach because the modern bots exploit different layers of security, not just one. And another mistake that I would mention is a lack of understanding of how a regular WordPress website and the server works and how it is visible to a bot. So, for instance, a bot can attack a site that was just launched and is not even listed in search engines. And that is usually a big surprise for a user. Also, if you just updated your username, for example, a bot can get the new one immediately and continue brute forcing it. That's because by default, you probably know that WordPress has usernames publicly exposed via its API, and bots like to use it a lot. Also, the fact that the user installed the security plugin itself doesn't usually mean that the attacks will stop. That is a very common delusion, and we have a whole article about that. So to stop the attacks completely, you need to set up a proxy, and that proxy should be smart enough to recognize the WordPress attack specifically and to not harm user experience at the same time. And this is usually something you cannot implement easily. For instance, we have thousands of clients who use Cloudflare, and still they need the extra protection from us.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
One thing I just wanted to mention is that we get dozens of customers, somewhat daily, that just cannot believe that they're getting this many attacks. And they just launched their website like a day ago, and they're like, how can they do it? And the reality is that the brute force bot detection can happen, from a hosting server level. So, they already kind of zeroed in on that host. They already know how to find that website immediately. And that's a big misconception. We have to constantly explain this to users is that, just because you just launched a site today doesn't necessarily mean that you can't be found immediately. And that's something hard to explain to a new WordPress user because they just don't believe it. They honestly think that we're doing it. It's like, hey, are you creating these attacks just to get us to upgrade to premium? No, like these are legitimate brute force attacks that happen on day one. So that's why, like, when you launch a website, especially if you're a hosting company, you need to have protection immediately. You can't wait months to start putting security plugins and start taking action. You got to start on literally the day it launches. So
Yeah, right.
Yeah, makes sense. Akshay, do you have anything to add over this? Like biggest mistakes website owners will make when trying to detect bot and block them?
I think what these guys have covered is quite comprehensive. I We see so many common mistakes, and there's so much bad advice, out there, especially for WordPress website owners. Things
Hmm.
like hide WordPress login page,
Yeah,
hide XML RPC. There are a lot of common mistakes people make, and unfortunately, uh, what they don't realize is the way WordPress works. The sites can still get overloaded. Um, does the password get cracked? What is
hmm.
exactly happening? The visibility is not there. So people make a lot of such mistakes, and the answers are much more complicated. So.
Yeah,
So yeah, there are lots of mistakes, and a lot of it is actually I believe that a lot of the mistakes is because of really bad advice out there.
okay.
Because if you'll see so many people writing so many articles, they are filled
Hmm.
with so much bad advice, and it's so difficult to distinguish good from bad because all of them come with great authority.
Yeah.
So also you will come across so many articles which say you should first thing you should do is change your login page. Now, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? For a lay person, it's really difficult to understand that. Will that
Hmm.
protect you from a bot attack? Will it not protect you from bot attack? Hey, in theory it should. Hey, but then what are the downsides? So there are that that critical analysis is really difficult for a lay person to do, and and it is, yeah. So that's what makes security such a tricky and such a difficult topic to discuss.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think you rightly mentioned that, a lot of good or bad advice comes from very good authority. So it's very difficult to distinguish and, decide which ones to follow and which ones to don't. Akshat, I will continue asking you another question, which is, with the advent of AI and technology, how can people distinguish between real, bad bots and real users, right? I mean, because it's sometimes very hard to distinguish because the user behavior is almost very human-like, but it's not a human. So how do you suggest people to distinguish between real users and bots?
No, it's not an easy thing, frankly, and we are still in the early stages of the AI curve, frankly.
Yeah,
Like we are still very, very early, and we are already seeing AI bots resemble humans more and more.
yeah,
Okay, so a lot of bots that we are blocking actually are the non-AI bots. The AI bots that we see are they are real getting like they behave so much like a normal human bot. They they are filling forms. They are doing brute force attacks. They're doing credit card testing, and
yeah.
traditional methods that we used to protect from them, they just do not work anymore. Earlier, you could throw a captcha at them. I'm seeing uh, captcha getting solved. Google V2 V3 that's getting solved. We are seeing earlier, like a lot of firewalls had like a very simple JavaScript based check, like they would test for browser, but these bots are now solving them. So, and we are seeing this in action again and again. Like our firewall, our data is clearly showing that bots are circumventing these things. So
Hmm.
tracking these bots is non-trivial. I think what's going to happen is you will need to do a lot more behavioral analysis. I think, rate limiting, like what login attempts or the rate limiting will play a role, but also global networks, uh, and think solutions like Cloudflare or proxies will play an even more important role, because as they have more data, they can, or people who have more data can help protect you in a better manner.
Yeah.
So I think the data will be the answer to this.
Perfect. Very insightful, Akshat. Now, my question is for all three of you. I mean, for someone managing a WordPress site, right, without deep security knowledge, what are three immediate actions that they should take today to stop bot-driven brute force attack? Greg, I would go with you first.
well, obviously you got to install limit log attempts reloaded. That's the first thing. um, so definitely limiting excessive login attempts is the easiest thing you can do. The first thing you should do to prevent brute force. Obviously, like having good password policy. So let me give you an example of why a lot of times password fails. So you take a small business and they have the owner who knows good password policies. They have a strong password. They don't reuse passwords like you shouldn't. But it's the employees that are typically the culprits. So the employees get a login. Maybe they get a manager a login for WordPress that they can allow to post blogs, and they use poor password policies. They reuse passwords from previous websites, and they're the ones that are causing the issue. They're the ones getting hacked, and that's why it's important to have company-wide policies when it comes to protecting your sites. So I would say, aside from getting security protection, a security plugin, just having good site-wide company policies for password protection.
Perfect. Gyuri, any insights on this one?
Yeah, I would add that updating your password so they are strong and unique. And I want to emphasize the word unique because one of the very common types of attacks is credential stuffing. And so the best way to avoid it is to use a unique password on every website you use. And I would also add creating a backup, because if you get hacked, at least you will not lose your data and can restore your site afterwards in a new clean environment.
Interesting. Akshay, anything to add over here?
Yeah, so I think both obviously limiting login attempts, all of that is a very essential, and having strong passwords. So sometimes you enforcing and having strong passwords is important. Doing two-factor authentication is also very useful because it can help you from things like phishing. In many cases, we have seen that having a really good firewall and with which can protect you with which has good IP ways of IP scoring or IP rating, that can also help you. So yeah, again, these are good methodologies to protect your site.
Amazing. Again, I would start off with Gyuri on this one. What's the most effective way to monitor login attempts and detect suspicious activity before it turns into a full-blown attack?
First of all, you should use a well-known trusted security plugin. For example, limit login attempts. Reload it. It can reduce the velocity of attacks by the ways of throttling and dynamic IP denial. The second one would be set up real-time alerts. And also, I'd recommend you to make a habit to analyze logs. So some plugins provide login logs, and you can also check your server logs from time to time. And I would recommend putting this on your calendar and doing it on a regular basis.
Awesome. Greg, anything to add over here?
Yes. So just recently, we launched a new feature where you can actually review your login logs, your successful login logs. And why that's important is because back to the employee issue is that, let's say that someone does break in and logs in legitimately. So you need to know who's coming in and coming out of your website. If you identify someone from another country logs in, then most ideally this is not one of your team members, and you can take corrective action. And so it is very important, like Rory said, to make sure that you are monitoring not just your brute force activity, but the successful login logs to ensure that, and even besides brute force activity, maybe it's an old employee that still has access, that's going in there and maybe has malicious intent. So sometimes there's some human components to security that we often forget. So I just want to mention that.
Perfect. Akshat, anything to add to this?
Yeah, so I have a slightly different take. I think
Okay.
it's just the nature of the internet, that every public endpoint will be attacked.
Okay.
If you have a public endpoint, you're going to get attacked. Now, if you're a normal person running a website, but running the website is not your core business. Your core business is to do your business, right? Whatever that core business, you might be running a store, or you might be running a salon or whatever, right? And that's what you want to focus on. What you
Mm.
want to do is rely on a good security plugin, or something like limit login or MalCare, which just takes care of it, because it's just the nature of the internet.
Mm.
It's not possible for a normal person to sit and review logs. It's super difficult.
Yeah.
There are lots of activities happening. Make sure that the plugin is doing its job. Make sure that you have strong password, and having some basic stance using a good security plugin, and then monitoring. Yeah, have monitoring, have systems in place. Like if you have malcare, you will have activity log built into it. But you should not be like getting alarms for attacks happening. let
Mm.
let the security plugin do its job. You should not be yeah, you will, otherwise you are going to lose your mind altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So uh,
I,
don't
I,
don't
I agree. I agree with you on that, but if you are not watching the velocity of brute force attacks, it could affect performance. And I could tell you a number of examples of where our customers had elevated amounts of brute force attacks that have slowed down and affected performance during heavy shopping seasons that we had to come in and help, you know, provide other solutions for them. So, I agree on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't make sense to review your logs, but if you're getting an elevated attack, it should be something that you need to be aware of.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There are critical situations, but yeah, those are critical edge cases. But it's super easy for people to, because again, there's so much. The I think like Greg is mentioning, right? It's the edge case when you need to know it, like when you have
Mm.
when you have a real attack. But it's super easy to have, like, you know minor attacks, or where the firewall is taking care of it pretty well, and you can still get alarmed by it because you just don't understand, hey, is this a big attack or is it not? And that nuance has to be captured well, because in the absence of it, people start blaming, whether, or people start really double guessing, is are they even capable of running the site or
Mm.
managing the site, or they start blaming their web host. So there are so many of those factors, we have seen this so often, right? So trying to be more practical is uh, is the approach we like to take in this
Yeah.
case.
Yeah. So a little differences of opinion over there, but I think that's the beauty of having a panel discussion. So we get to see and hear more of what other people think about a certain case. So before I move on to the next question, I would like to take a question from the audience over here. So you mentioned Akshat about Google Captcha being, solved by bots, AI. So Westy over here asks that what is a good Google reCAPTCHA alternative for forms also then we can check out because it's obviously not effective anymore.
So it's not, I wouldn't say it's not effective, but we are seeing, like, I saw V3 reCAPTCHA again getting solved multiple times. It was actually strange that how well it was, the bots were able to handle it. But I think, like, this is a game of cat and mouse. So what we will see is, there are certain places where bots will invest a lot more. There are other
Mm.
places where captchas will be complex enough that uh, that bots will not invest, because there's a cost involved in doing
Yeah.
so. So it just comes down to what is it that you're trying to protect, and then the level of protection that you add there. So I think the Cloudflare has a captcha which is pretty good, but it's, again, I think Greg mentioned it, or Yuri mentioned it, that it's a layered approach, right? So it's not by itself it can help, but if you have multiple layers, one of the layers will catch it for sure.
All right. Greg, Yuri, anything to add over here?
We have a lot of our customers that ask us why we don't have CAPTCHA as a form of protection because it doesn't work anymore. So, I mean, for the most part, we don't believe it's an effective security solution because the bots are getting smarter and they'll just break it. Really, 2FA and then limiting logins is more of in line of like ample protection nowadays. So that's as far as alternative. I know limit login attempts in our premium version. We do protect forms as well, and maybe Gary can talk a little bit more about that. But I'm not really familiar with any other particular solutions that protect forms. But Gary, if you have anything to add on that.
Yeah, we are planning to implement this feature. It will be based on our huge data set, and basically it will be similar to what we're already doing with our login pages, but we will apply this to other forms of a website, like comment forms, checkout forms, and other different forms. But yeah, in general, I agree with Greg. Nothing to add here.
Perfect. So moving on to the next question, and I would start off with Greg on this one. Greg, based on the latest brute force report, I mean, the one that you worked on, can you walk us through an example of real-world attack scenario and how a website successfully mitigated it?
Yeah, so a typical real-world scenario, I mean, you got brute force attacks typically are not constant. You'll see you could go a couple weeks with very little activity, and then a couple days you could get massive spikes. And then if the brute force bot doesn't achieve success, it just kind of moves on to the next one. So that's typically what we see in most cases. So, a real-world example is that they have a massive spike. There might be some performance degradation because they're just getting bombarded. And so, what our plugin does is that our premium version, it absorbs that traffic. So your website can retain its performance. And then we absorb it, and then we use our cloud intel. So we have tens of thousands of domains that we pull IP data up from a daily basis. So we're using that IP intelligence to counter all of these attacks and absorb them, so your site can remain at its optimal performance. So that's a typical example of how our what we see when it comes to brute force and how the attacks happen.
Awesome. So another question that I have over here in the panel discussion questions, and I think one of the people in the audience also had this question. So I'm just going to move on to that one. And let's say a site owner suspects that they're under attack. I mean, they just had this signal, or they felt that there is something wrong with the website, and it might have been compromised. What's a step-by-step emergency plan that they should follow? I mean, what is the first thing that they should do, and what is the most important thing that they should do? I mean, what should be the step-by-step execution plan to make sure that their website is safe? Akshat, can you go just take us through that?
Okay, so there are two parts to this, right? One is a site is under attack, as in they're under attack by a bot. And the second part is the bot has gotten through, or there is a bot. In fact, bots are not always brute force bots. There are also bots which are trying to exploit vulnerabilities, which are also very, very common, and a very, very big source of sites getting hacked, which we see very, very often with MalCare. So the very first thing you should do is, if you suspect your site has gotten hacked, is install something like MalCare, a security plugin which will deeply scan your site and identify if it has been hacked or not. First, that's the first step, because first you need to know if it has been compromised. If you suspect it has been compromised, or you should be having a system in place where your site is regularly scanned, like using something like MalCare to ensure that your site is getting scanned every day. And if there is any hack or any irregular activity, then that is quickly flagged, and then you can take a quick remediation. And the quickest remediation to take is to get rid of the hack or remove the malware at the earliest. The longer the malware is around, the more damage it causes. it is so removing the malware at the earliest is super important. I think one of the mistakes which people make is, if they think that the site is hacked, is they think they try to restore it from a backup, which we think is a really bad idea, because you don't know which backup, whether your backup has been infected or not. So essentially what you need to do is first try and remove the malware very, very, like, in a very specific manner, by first identifying what happened, where is the malware, and removing all the backdoors. And once you are confident about it, then go about securing your site by installing a good firewall. So that's our approach to protecting your site if you think it's compromised.
Awesome. Anything different that you might suggest, Greg, Yuri? Anything you want to add to this?
Rory?
Well, I can work well. I can look at this topic from a person who worked in a hosting company for 5 to 10 years, and the most frequent issue with the sites being attacked is their reduced performance. So I would suggest the following course of actions in this situation. The first thing you should do is you should confirm that the site is indeed under an attack. For that, you should check some logs and check your site performance. The second step would be notifying your dev team, if you have any, or your hosting provider, if you are not self-hosted. And usually, well, in emergency situations, your website can go down. And if it goes down, you should block all IPs other than your developer IPs. This should be done on the server or proxy level. Then you should create a backup of your site. The next step would be unlocking all IP addresses, but start blocking them again, and you start block the most active attacking IP addresses. Again, this should be done on the server or proxy level, and unfortunately, it should be done manually based on your logs. Also, another measure could be temporarily increasing your computing resources. And if the attack targets some known specific pages, you can cache them as well. So all of these are the most frequent scenarios that we experienced in the past. And this is the most effective way of getting your website back on track, especially during some busy seasons or during some events. For example, when we had a network of newspaper websites, this was pretty common issue when they publish a like hot news, and there's an increased amount of traffic, even legit traffic. So we had to deal with these issues like that. And I think this is usually enough to respond to the attack. The next steps would be planning on how to avoid them in the future.
Perfect. Thank you, Yuri. Greg, anything that you would like to add to this, or is it something that you think and your thoughts are similar to Akshat and Yuri?
No, I just echo the other panelists here. So, if you're under attack, the first thing you're going to notice is degraded performance. And then from there on, it's exactly what these guys said. So I don't really have when all of our customers from limit login attempts, when they decide, to step up their security, it's always like, hey, my site's slow. It's not loading page properly. It's always starts there.
Perfect. Before I move on to the next question, I would just like to again scroll in the comments section, see what our audience is up to. So Ralph doesn't have a question, but it's more of a comment. One of my best security practices is to never rely on just one level of login or form security. but to use multiple layers of security and security measures. I think that's very practical and I think very common among site owners. You so Anto actually has a very good question. I just wanted to address this one before I move on to the next question. So he asks that what industries or types of websites are currently the biggest threat or targets for brute force attacks? I mean, is there an industry or a niche that is certainly more exposed as compared to others? Greg, you can
Yeah, I can take this one. So typically, brute force attacks are very agnostic. They'll go after small websites to very large ones. It's all about what are they trying to achieve. And for the small websites, even though there might be a monetary or ransomware opportunity, they use those sites as proxies to launch other attacks. So just because you're a small blog doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have value to a hacker. Now, we also see a spike in brute force activity in around seasons, seasonality. So like during the holiday shopping season, we see a high increase in brute force attacks because one, IT departments are on vacation, and two, if they do attack and are successful, they can use ransomware or other forms of crime to give access back, to the site owners, or one of the things we saw with a couple of our clients where they'll attack the site, they'll claim that they have a bug that's slowing down their site, and then there's some deal with crypto to restore access. There's all sorts of things that can happen, but really it's not. So the bigger bigger e-commerce stores are not necessarily the targets in that respect. Sometimes it's those like medium-sized businesses or mid-market businesses that they can actually extract value or extract things out of, because like they're not big enough to where they have big IT departments, but they're big enough to where they can generate some money by ransomware and whatnot. But really, brute force attacks are mostly agnostic. They have a purpose in each industry, small or large, of what they're going to do when they attack, whether it be using it as a proxy or using to use ransomware.
Anything you want to add, Akshat or Gyuri? Anything you feel differently on this topic?
No, I think Greg said it pretty well, that it's pretty agnostic. And yeah, even like I think Greg had mentioned earlier, a site spins up and it's under attack. So
Yeah, I'm assuming Gyuri, you have the same opinion as Akshat
Yeah.
and Greg, right?
Yeah, I can confirm what Greg just said.
Perfect. Yeah, so I was I'm just going to make sure that we take all the questions from the comments before I move on to the next panel question, and let's see what people over here are talking about. So NK Tolly says that CAPTCHA is dead. Yeah, they think that the new AI bots can solve them better than humans. So thank you so much for this comment, NK Tolly. Anything? Yeah, so I think this is pretty much it from the questions in the comments so far. I'm sure there are going to be many more once we move forward with the session. So I'm going to be moving on to the next question from the panel, and I'm going to talk about more about the future of bot mitigation. I mean, what the future holds for site bots, and with AI shaping again. I would like to inculcate AI over here again. With AI shaping both attacks and defense mechanisms. I mean, you have AI, you have people using AI for bot attacks, and then you have people using AI to defend their websites from those bot attacks as well, right? Where do you see bot mitigation heading in the next 2 to 3 years? I mean, where do you see this technology, or where do you see the shift in technology when it comes to, website owners coming up with solutions, or developers coming up with solutions that can completely mitigate bots? I mean, Gyuri, can you take us off with that one?
Well, I think we'll see more security systems using machine learning under the hood, and we already heading into that direction with our plugin. I also think that more systems will start integrating with each other to increase the combined efficiency, because based on how we work on our cloud side, I can see a huge potential in sharing information and data between different websites. So then they can fight together against botnets. So it would be like something opposite to a botnet, but from the that would be a dark side versus a light side.
Yeah.
So yeah, but the most exciting thing is machine learning right now, I think, and I'm happy to find out what is going to be next.
Nice. Akshat, anything that you want to add to this? I mean, the future of bot mitigation. I mean, you obviously are working in this industry for the past, decade or so. Anything that you see changing over the next decade?
Yeah, so again, machine learning, AI will be needed to fight AI and machine learning more specifically. I think cloud-based solutions, and because of the nature of it, and especially because of the nature change of scale and the number of IPs that we see increasing, a cloud-based solution, hybrid solutions will become more prominent and more important than we have seen in the past. So, uh, so yeah, machine learning, cloud-based solutions I think will go more in that direction
Yeah.
in the next few years.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo these guys here. So last year, we would counter around 88% of all attacks prior to getting to their log, to hitting their login database. And our attack efficiency has grown from 88% to 97% in a year because of the cloud data that we have. So just like Rory said, there's a light side. There's good guys that are gathering all this IP intelligence and using it to protect the entire WordPress network. And the more sites that participate in this, the stronger our protection will be as a whole. And it's getting more complex where these IP addresses could be legitimate one day, but then be bad the next. So that's what we're doing at Limit Login Attempts Reloaded. We are making sure that we build the most powerful cloud based IP intelligence in WordPress, so that way we can, do the best job we can to protect the entire community. But there'll be other services, I'm sure, like MalCare, that are going to, support that effort. But we really need, to kind of work as a group here. It's kind of like herd immunity with vaccines. We want to make sure that the more of us that are secure and protected and using cloud-based technologies, the better the network will be as a whole.
Perfect. Thank you so much, gentlemen. There's another question in the comment that I want to, get your attention towards. So Riyadh Brisam has a question. He wants to thank us for the session. You're welcome, Riyadh. I have a question. Can you say something about the backend hacking implication of these issues? I assume we are only talking WordPress itself. What are the tools hackers use, and what can you do in the WordPress backend and dashboard? What can you do additionally, for example, in the HTML level or in Python? I mean, if you guys can answer this question, that's fine. If you can't, that's also completely fine as well. But I just wanted to make sure that we address this question because I think it's a good one.
I have a question. Can you?
Yeah, it's a bit lengthy.
Backend hacking implications of these issues. I assume we are talking only about WordPress. What are the tools hackers use? No, I think that I'm not very familiar with the tools, and it's a completely different.
Guri, are you familiar with this question at all?
Sorry, I barely heard the question. If you repeat it.
Oh, it's what are the tools that hackers use, and what can you do in the WordPress backend to protect?
I think what the user is trying to ask is that what are some of the tools that users use, that hackers use to attack websites, and in the backend, what can we do to protect our websites?
All right. So, yeah, we had some events related to that in the past, and usually it works like that. Imagine that a hacker knows your password, their login attempt was successful. It can happen via a login page or via FTP. Their next step is installing a plugin. That plugin will be named somehow legit, so you cannot find out very fast that this plugin is malicious. And that plugin opens basically the whole website for that hacker remotely. They can do whatever they want. And the worst case scenario is that they start silently gathering different information, for example, logins, unencrypted passwords, payment information, etc. And well, from my experience, this is the most frequent way of doing this stuff. Of course, they run some viruses that infect a lot of files across the whole WordPress installation. But if we are talking about tools, very frequently they just upload some already made plugins. And I think those plugins are taken from someone somewhere online. A lot of people publish them on GitHub. And well, we saw plugins like two most frequent were the plugins for newslettering. They just send out spam. And the second one was like a shell. It provides full access to your WordPress installation, and you can do whatever you want with it.
Awesome. So, gentlemen, I'm going to be moving towards the final question of this session. And again, it's something about the future of web security, future of bot protection. So if each of you had one golden rule that you would like to share with the audience about, bot protection in 2025 and beyond, what would that be? I would start off with Akshat on this.
Okay, so my approach is that there are lots of bots out there. Instead of trying to solve and trying to protect yourself from all the bots and be like, you understand the bots that you want to protect your site from, the ones that are really dangerous, that are going to use resources or hack your site, and have approach for that instead of like, hey, there's a small bot there that's accessed my site or that's scraping my site. Yeah, there are some bots you should just let it be and focus on the bots which are really dangerous or using up the resources. So that's one approach that we think we need to do more and more of in the future.
All right, Yuri, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I would say the golden rule would be always set up multiple layers of security. So your security should look like a sandwich.
All right, Greg, any
Yeah,
final thoughts?
I was going to say exact same thing Guri said. To have layers, 2FA, limit logins, malware scanning. You don't have to be an expert in security to have a secure website. That's why you have us up here. We're building the technology. We're doing that work for you. And I mean, you can secure your website for very, very little. And I also would caution to rely too heavily on free plugins for your security, because free plugins obviously are limited in what they can do. And some sites might be fine with free security plugins, but a lot of the premium features are where you're going to get a lot of the meat in security. So just be cautious of just going for the cheapest option, because I'm not sure how much MalCare is, but even our premium annual is $40 a year, US dollars, and it's not very much to get much more protection. So just consider like how valuable your website. If your website's generating millions of dollars in e-commerce and you're relying on a bunch of free tools to secure your website, it might be a good idea to pay for the premium versions of some of these plugins, whether it be WordPress or MalCare for the login attempts, because that little extra could go a really long way in securing your sites.
Perfect. I think that with that, I would like to, conclude this session. And I would like to thank all three of you for being here today
Thank you.
and time out of your busy schedule and asking questions for us. I'm sure all the people listening to this session must have learned a thing or two from you guys on how to protect their websites from bots and how to manage their bots, how to identify between good and bad bots. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Akshay. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Gyuri, for being here today. And I wish you all the best for your future and for your current project as well. So thank you for